have handy. Should have handy. Give me a second. I don't know why it's not pulling up correctly. What can go wrong will go wrong, but hold on. Here we go. All right. It's 4:01 on the 22nd of June. This is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the acts of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchek, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely via Microsoft Teams, and that information is available on the website. Sure. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask for the roll call, but I noticed that Delegate O'Malley has recently disappeared. So
Well, we still have a quorum
we
with
have a
three.
quorum without him.
Indeed. All right. Deputy Speaker Frizel.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher will not be joining us. Vice Chair Killian.
Here.
Chair Oman.
Here.
And we'll go check on Delegate O'Malley in a moment. You could, I did kind of text the administration, so hopefully they'll sign on. But you could start with the Cape Cod Commission ordinance or the other discussion you have while we're waiting.
Okay, we'll skip to number 4 then. Proposed ordinance 2026-16, authorizing the rescission of borrowing authorization previously approved under ordinance 22-09 for the Cape Cod Commission Capital Building project associated with the purchase and renovation of office and meeting space in the amount of $4 million. And would further authorize the project to instead be funded through the use of restricted balances within the Cape Cod Environmental Protection Fund in the same amount of $4 million. I would ask Gail Coyne to speak to that. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the request is relatively straightforward. At the time the original ordinance was approved back in 2022, it wasn't certain if we would have the cash to pay or if we would need to borrow some or all of that balance. Now, I think you're aware we currently have a significant balance. We have $4,450,000 set aside for the capital project. So we could certainly, pay with cash for the building and its renovations, and the county would not need to borrow for this project.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We have questions. I see that Delegate Frizel, Deputy Speaker Frizel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just one question. So if you don't spend the $4 million, because you don't need the $4 million from the reserves, what are you going to do? I mean, you moved it out of reserves. You're just going to leave it in your operating budget? What's the plan?
It's still in reserves. We have the entire Cape Cod Environmental Protection Fund is a reserved fund balance. No, I understand what you're saying. It's in a capital budget right now. I assume that we will use it. If we don't, it would revert back to the fund.
All right. So it could be used then for our operating expenses in the future.
It's in a capital budget, so I would imagine it would have to be used for capital expenses.
Yeah. Okay, it's going to be in a capital budget, so
Correct.
that category would then to be transferred back to something else. Because this doesn't say here that we're putting it in a particular category. So, which is what I think we do in your budget when we move money into particular areas. Then we put them in categories. I'll ask the clerk, so I thought that's how we did it with the ordinance. Mr. Clerk?
I am here. Generally, we do put.
So wouldn't this ordinarily go into a category?
Generally, if it's meant to be a supplemental, it would go into whatever category it's supposed to go in. I'm not 100% sure, though. I'd have to take a closer look at it. But yeah, we usually that's category B if it's capital.
Yeah. So if it was going to go into, I mean, I don't have a problem with the substance of this. It's a question of just the technicalities of it to preserve what we do in all budgets at the Finance Committee, which is to put them into a particular category, and then under the ordinances, which we have approved, money can't be moved into different categories without the approval of the Assembly. So if this is in category B as a capital item, then to move it to a different category for other uses would require your approval, getting approval from the Assembly. That's all I'm really focusing on here. So I'll just ask again to the clerk whether we need any additional language for that purpose here.
Sorry about that, Deputy Speaker. Having a little technical difficulty here. I didn't catch the last thing.
Sure, I'm just asking whether we need any additional language to accomplish making sure that this is in a category that if there are unexpended funds from this project, that to move them into something other than that category would require a vote of the Assembly.
And we can certainly take a look at the language, and I can work with Ms. Coyne and Carol to make sure that we accomplish what you're intending. I mean,
Yeah.
we definitely have budget language to choose from, and depending on how this is worded or how it works, we shouldn't have a problem coming up with that language.
Yeah. Okay, so that, Mr. Chairman, that's just my issue with this. I don't have any issue with the substance of it, obviously.
Thank you. Further questions for the Cape Cod Commission on number 4? Seeing none, I can go for a recommendation to the full Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, I would move favorable, recommending favorable action to the Assembly on this ordinance, and subject to the additional language that we've just discussed here with the clerk.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Killian seconds. Is there further discussion on this item? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher is not here. Vice Chair Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley
Yes.
and Chair Omen.
Yes.
That's unanimous, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll go right back to number 3 now that we have the county here, the administration here. Proposed ordinance 2026-15, authorizing the rescission of a portion of borrowing authorization previously approved under ordinance number 2024-01 for the Cooperative Extension AmeriCorps Vehicle Replacement Project in the amount of $6,634.25.
I
Doug.
can take that up if the chair
Thank
would
you.
like. It's actually quite simple. Carol would explain it much better than I can, but I will take a crack at it. Simply put, we borrowed funding back in 2024 to fund vehicle replacement that was done, and there was a leftover amount of $6,634.25, which we would now like to rescind to essentially clean up the books.
Thank you. It sounds pretty straightforward to me. Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like a very straightforward House keeping item for me too. And so, I mean, I'm prepared if you'd like to make a motion to move this along.
Please.
I move that the committee recommend favorable action to the Assembly for proposed ordinance 2026-15.
Thank
I'll
you. I
second.
need a second. No, Killian seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none? Roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher, Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
It's unanimous, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to number 5. Proposed ordinance 2026-17 authorizing the Dredge Enterprise Fund Capital Program to rescind borrowing authorization previously approved under ordinance 2025-01 in the amount of $150,000 for replacement of a CAT engine on a booster station, and to authorize the repurposing of the remaining authorized unissued and/or unexpended bond proceedings in the amount of $76,613.01 for the for the CAT engine capital project and the Dredge Enterprise Fund. Administrator Dutton, is that you on?
Sure. Again, Carol could do a much better job than I will, but I will take a crack at it. The county had borrowed to replace the Caterpillar booster pump engine. We had voted you had voted $150,000 of debt authorization for that. And let's see, the best way to put it is the cost of that, the final cost ended up being $76,613.01. And we happen to have done a debt borrowing back in 2013 for the acquisition of a new dredge. We did not use all of the proceeds of those funds for the acquisition of the dredge, so those excess proceeds have been sitting in an account. So just for a little bit of context, when you borrow money, you generally get an authorization for a certain amount, but you borrow only what the actual cost of a project or a capital item is going to be. In this case, the county, for some reason or another, I don't know the history, it was 13 years ago, borrowed the full amount of the authorization, and in reality only needed $1.8 million and change of the $2 million authorized. So there were funds left over. What Carol's trying to do is expend those funds and extinguish or rescind the $150,000 authorization that you had voted in 2025. Does that make any sense?
Yes, but where does it go now?
The proceeds, the excess proceeds from we're just rescinding the authorization. There was no actual money borrowed under that $150,000 authorization.
Thank you. Are there questions regarding this ordinance? Delegate Frizell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have a problem with the substance of what you're doing here. It makes sense. It's another one of these kind of house cleaning type ordinances. I just would suggest, without any, I just think it'd be better, let's put it that way, to word this a little differently. In section 2, it's kind of odd to use first voted. We don't usually put that in an ordinance. I think you can streamline section 2 by simply saying that ordinance, in other words, scratch lines, the rest of line 1, 2, and 3 until you get to the word ordinance. That ordinance 2013-03 adopted on May 8, 2023 is hereby amended. Blah, 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 period. That's it. I don't think we need the rest of that language. And it gets the job done. That's just a suggestion on a language change, and I'm not going to fall on my sword if you don't do it, but I just
No, I think that is a point well taken, and over the course of the last year or so, we've tried to sort of streamline what the ordinance actually says. because we want to make it very clear for, future researchers about exactly what we were trying to do and what we did. If there's more, this is a slightly more complex transaction. So Carol did follow it up with a memo trying to better explain,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. Leave the nuts and bolts to the ordinance and leave the, extensive conversation, extensive explanation to the memo. Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you. Clerk Fletcher.
Just going to say the same thing that I said about the other one, which is, we kind of know how to do this now. I can make sure that I work with you, Deputy Speaker, and with Michael and Carol to make sure the language is as tight as we can have it. So
That won't interfere with the vote today, whether it be up or down.
no, I mean, because you're making, thankfully, I think, a pretty clear record of what you want, and so I can just work after the fact to make sure that that's reflected in whatever language we need, and we can just amend it on the floor.
Okay, very good. Any further questions? I see Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dutton, just a quick, I know you went through the number. So what was the actual amount beyond what we needed that we borrowed in 2013?
It was 172,500.
Yeah. It's in the memo.
Yeah.
172,500.
Thank you.
We already repurposed 48,058 of that, which leaves the remaining balance here of 123, and we're going to use 76.
Okay. Further discussion on this issue? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Well, I'd make a motion.
Oh,
first,
you have
if
moved
like.
it.
Yeah,
I
I've
thought
moved.
it was-
Sorry,
I thought it was
I would move that we the committee vote favorable action by the Assembly on this proposed ordinance 2026-17.
Thank you, and I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Delegate Killian seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Deputy Speaker Frizell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher, Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Delegate O'Malley?
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on to number 6. Proposed ordinance 2026-18 to authorize general fund budget transfers totaling $81,500 for the purpose of funding information technology salaries of $1,500 and laboratory supplies of $80,000. Administrator Dutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one,
also-
again, fairly, I'm sorry,
We
fairly
have Carol
straightforward.
Coppola here, if you'd rather have her explain it.
Would you rather have Carol explain it?
I'm game for either one. As
I
long
don't
as
know,
we
you're
get the-
batting 1,000 so far.
I'm on a roll. I'll take this one. This one's pretty easy.
Okay.
I say that now. Obviously, during the course of the year, there are line items that are underspent, line items that require that we fund additional monies in order to cover expenses that accrue to those line items. This is one of those cases. Their total budget transfer of $81,500. It's not a supplemental budget, simply a budget transfer. Information technology salaries, $1,500 due to the retirement of one of the unexpected retirement of one of the IT employees. And then laboratory supplies, I think we've been pretty clear that, well, the world has been pretty clear that laboratory supplies have skyrocketed in cost. That affects us to the tune of $80,000. And those funds are coming from salary line items in laboratory that have not been expended. So simple budget transfer, but it does require assembly approval.
I think we're all very aware of that situation with supplies, and especially laboratory supplies being harder to find and more expensive when you find them. Will this affect the 2027 budget, or has that been amended to the point where we won't expect this supplemental to be coming through?
Good question. We did amend not amend, we did budget what we thought was an appropriate amount for the 2027 budget. We're crossing our fingers and hope that we are correct. So it's hard to have a crystal ball these days.
Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do recall that was one of the things that was focused on during the budget review for FY27, and that was an increased number that the subcommittee, the health subcommittee focused on, and the explanation is what you just said now. So I'm hoping that it's built in good enough. Again, we don't know everything about the future that might affect that number, but that's why I'm not surprised to see you come back and make this budget transfer for FY26. I can understand that. Again, I have no problem with the substance of this. I understand. I just think, again, and bear with me again, I'm not going to fall on a sword for this, but I think lines 17 and 18 on page 1 and 1 and 2 on page 2 are unnecessary. The ordinance, nuts and bolts, does it. Doesn't matter what you say, it's what happens. And so that I think is just words that aren't needed.
Point well taken.
Point taken. This will not. I hope this will not affect the vote. We can change that language for the full assembly. Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
I move.
Oh, you
Chairman.
moved. I'm sorry.
I will move that the committee recommend favorable action to the assembly on ordinance 2026-18 with that language change.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher, Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you so much. Now for number 7. Discussion regarding the Cape Cod Regional Government's revenue and expenditure long-range projection and planning. Let's start with salaries and fringe benefits. I'm glad to see the treasurer and the administration director here for that. You made an excellent presentation, Carol. Could you update it? Is there something you can add to this conversation that will give us some sort of pause to find out exactly how much in debt we might be in FY28?
I'd be happy to have a conversation with regard to the analysis that I performed.
Yeah.
I don't know quite where you would like to begin.
Well,
Would you like to simply review the numbers?
Well, yeah, that would be part of it. I'll defer to my fellow members of the committee too to maybe elucidate exactly what they're looking for in this too. But I guess what we're looking at is your projection still as dire as you gave it? Was that a maybe a very conservative way to look at it, or can we really look at 7 figures of deficit in FY28 as you predicted? So, and how does fringe benefits and salaries apply to that? What is there any thoughts that the administration has given to that?
So at that time, which is nearly a year ago when that was prepared, that was the trajectory of the numbers that for the general fund. This is just general fund numbers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
And, we were looking at pretty high health insurance increases, as well as carrying forward COLA at 3%. We did carry forward COLA at 3%. And then between your stepping increases and COLA, there was historically, or for a number of years anyway, a standard 6% increase in your salary line items in the general fund. For those at the top step, those were more like a 3% COLA and then up to a 2% merit, if appropriate. So that is how we built the salary. Fringe, we were adding 10%. Group insurance increases year over year. And that whether that comes to fruition or not, as we know, this year it was, or FY27 is going to be an 8% increase. So there is, probably a little room there, but we were pretty conservative on our increases or our projected increases in other line items, like your other expenses, whether they're contracted services, supplies, or things of that nature. We didn't show growth with personnel. So that's a factor that you want to take into account. Now, what happens typically on these longer term financial forecasts, they're updated on an annual basis because factors change, information changes, tariffs came into play. We didn't anticipate some of those items when this was prepared. But so do I stand behind where we, where those numbers or how those numbers were calculated nearly a year ago? Yes, I do. And I do think that moving forward, the county will need to make some decisions about programs, about other, additional revenue streams, or about the use of the revenue stabilization fund that you currently have set aside.
Thank you. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds. I'll stop right there. I see Delegate O'Malley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask if I'm remembering or having read right, Ms. Coppola, you're saying, well, when we talked about this the last time, we looked at the very limited number of options that we have for bending this curve. There aren't many. And obviously, one of the ones that came to mind was fringe benefits, particular steps and the cost of living allowances. And I if I'm not mistaken, you ran a kind of quick calculation of how much impact it would have on that curve if we took those down by 1% or 2%. And it struck, as I recall it, I don't have that in front of me. It was pretty trivial. Am I understanding that correctly? That's not going to make a substantial difference in our deficit.
I mean, thank you for the question. That was not the original intention of the fiscal forecast that we prepared. It may have been a side question that we addressed after the fact, but that was not part of the core project that we worked on. But certainly, a 1% increase either way. We did analyze that in the budget for FY27, is
Yes.
whether the commissioners awarded an additional percent and the assembly delegates as well, and that those numbers were minimal, as well as conversation or the subject matter of fringe benefits, which I do think that it was not part of that fiscal forecast presentation, but more part of the FY27 discussions, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So I'm just going to.
What I take away from that was a sense that that's not particularly going to be worth our time, and clearly that's going to be fraught with a lot of difficulties. And I don't like the feeling of cutting back on what staff has won as benefits. So I don't like that. And if at the same time it's really not going to make a significant change in the big picture, I think we have to look elsewhere.
I think that was Deputy Administrator Vera Herrick that did that. She did kind of a back of the envelope analysis and said if you're going to do this, it might cause more harm and not do much good. I think she was very clear about that. I know there was something that she did on the spot, but not without a lot of knowledge to come up with that estimate. So that's what my remember was.
When you
So,
say that now, yes, I think,
yeah.
John, you're correct.
Thank you.
That's who it was. Yes, I don't
Can
have it.
I'd like to.
handy. Yeah.
I'm not going to move on to. I'm going to move on to Deputy Speaker Frizel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of areas. First of all, yeah, I think that is what I recall from what the assistant administrator said the last time we talked about this. But that was just saying, if you only changed 1% COLA, that's the difference, or 1%, 1 percentage point COLA, or 1 percentage point step, okay? But it didn't account for what could happen if you changed the health insurance sharing. And the numbers that we just received recently from Treasurer Capola, I think the numbers are more significant when you start looking at sharing ratios on health insurance. I'm not saying it's going to eliminate your deficit, but I don't know that we need to look at one silver bullet that eliminates the structural deficit. It can be composed of more than one item that leads us in that direction. So when I saw those numbers from the treasurer, I said, well, this is an area we should continue to look at. And I think back at the time in which the treasurer made a presentation in her slides in December of 2025, she had a menu of policy choices that I think we should, as a committee, review with the administration, because those are thoughtful policy considerations. One of them is to look at this kind of the healthcare benefit area. There's no one thing on that list, I think, that says, okay, you do this, you've solved the structural deficit for the next 10 years. No one is suggesting that, but we have to look at more than one thing. And that leads me to another thing, which is, again, in the presentation, in the slides that were presented back then, I just like to understand better, when we talk about the reserves and reserve balances and stabilization funds, what we're talking about, because I don't think a stabilization fund is the same thing as a reserve fund. And I think they have different purposes, and they're a source of providing additional funds to manage the future expenditures that we're going to incur, especially in the capital category, which is a substantial number. But the reserve funds are a different thing. And reserve funds are not intended to be expended as a matter of budgetary discipline. And so I'd like to go back and look at that, because I'm seeing several categories. I'd like to have make sure I understand them. So I see there's an unreserved fund, there's a general stabilization fund, there's an emergency stabilization fund, there's a PFAS stabilization fund, there's a capital stabilization fund, and a revenue stabilization fund. I count 6 funds, and they have different amounts in them. And I'd like to know what those are and how they grow, if they do grow, and the source of their growth. So that would be helpful to me, because that's a pot of money that we either can touch or we better not touch, unless some situations arise where we need to dip into it. And the treasurer has given us those reasons with respect to the unreserved fund balance, when we should or should not tap into it. So can someone first, just to make sure I understand what these funds are?
Who'd like to take that one?
I mean, I could take it if you'd like.
Thank you.
So these stabilization funds were set by ordinance, and we can pull those ordinances and provide the direct language for you of how the stabilization funds can be utilized. It does take 2/3 vote of the Assembly of Delegates to utilize any of those funds, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, the same to deposit funds into the stabilization funds. So they all have their own particular purpose. And I don't have the exact verbiage off the top of my, tongue, at the tip of my tongue. But we certainly can provide that for you.
Okay, I would like to see those because I
Sure.
really need to look at the exact language for those funds. But just initially to clear something up for me, because we talk about it all the time. We talk about something called the Revenue Stabilization Fund. We talk about a General Stabilization Fund, and then we have unreserved. So the unreserved, I'm thinking, is the undesignated fund balance, which is like surplus that accumulates year to year. But I could be wrong. And then I don't know how that is different from what's called the revenue stabilization and what's called general stabilization. Those three funds confuse me.
Well, the Assembly of Delegates would have authorized the ordinances for
Yeah.
both of those stabilization funds with their purposes, which is different than, should I wait for the Assembly Clerk to make a comment here? Seems, no.
I don't see his hand up. Well, I do
It's
now.
up.
I do see his
Yeah.
hand
It's
up.
up.
There it is. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, we have all of those, Deputy Speaker, and we can
Yeah.
certainly, I can get them to you kind of fast. All of them are kind of set up by the Assembly. It's a little strange because normally, a county under Chapter 35 can only have two, I believe. It's just one stabilization fund and one capital fund. But ours were set up, actually, when I worked for the executive branch, through the ordinance process. And so we have ordinances for all of those, and they all kind of have their own purpose and reason for being.
So that's
Hope
something
that's
we can
helpful.
banter around among ourselves, right? Without taking extra time out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But one thing I would like to see as part of, we get to work on what is a good policy and
Yeah.
structural, in dealing with structural deficit and making a structurally balanced budget. Recommendations actually the treasurer's slide recommends this. I don't consider it a structural balanced budget, a budget that dips into our unreserved or undesignated general fund balance. That to me is not balanced budgeting. And we have to always preserve that for unforeseen things, for something that pops up we didn't plan on, that we believe is short-term in nature, but not something we budget in on a regular, ongoing basis. Thank you.
That's my understanding. Is there any rebuttal to that? I mean, that seems to me exactly what those reserves are intended to do, even though there's six of them, including PFAS. That I can see where that stands alone.
Yeah.
That's the elephant in the room in many ways, right? Thank you for that.
I agree with yeah.
So you've dipped into B already, but so since we're now on A and B the same, I saw that Delegate O'Malley had his hand up. Has your question been answered?
Oh, I'm having all kinds of technical trouble. I didn't put it up. I've got it. I couldn't get it down, but I do now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, out of these, we've talked about salaries, a little bit about fringe, and stabilization of other special revenue funds. The last one, and maybe the biggest one, is fiscal forecast for fiscal years 2027 through 2036. Any policy considerations? That's a big question. I don't know how far we're going to get into it today, but is the administration begun working on those kind of questions for a 10-year plan? And one of the reasons I'm glad this is on here is because you had a recent retirement in IT, and it cost us $1,500. Now, is that person going to be replaced? I mean, I know Administrator Dutton, you said that we're going to look at every job, and if it doesn't have to be replaced, we won't replace it. So here's one right here in front of us that came up today. Well, it came up and it came into our view today. What are your considerations for something like that in a retirement? Is there been a plan for not just this retirement, but future retirements too? Is there any, or is this a one at a time thought process?
Great question. I think generally it has to be a one at a time thought process when you're dealing with, the wide array of services that the county offers. In the case of IT, the retirement, IT, as you know, provides services to, I think now 7 towns, varying degrees of services to 7 of the 15 towns. We've just brought on Provincetown for certain IT services. So this particular position will be replaced, and it will have to be, but you know, as you may recall from the budget presentations, we're looking at engaging a firm to provide basic IT response to problems both within the county IT user system as well as the town's IT users. So being able to contract with a firm to provide immediate response, not some of the very technical, very detailed network issues that town might experience or we might experience internally, but just some of the basic things that chew up a lot of time. That's a great thing to contract out, and so we have begun to do that. We've begun that process to contract out those responses or those immediate things. So, but having said that, since we've taken on another town to some degree, that particular position we will need to replace. But again, I think to your point about whether or not it's across the board view of things or a case by case situation. Ultimately, it's a case by case, and we have to. Sometimes we'll redefine what role or what that job is based upon the county's needs. So we don't necessarily immediately just reflexively go out and post a job because somebody retired. That wouldn't make sense. That's like we'd still have telegraph operators if we did it that way, and that's not what we want to. Those aren't the people we want to be replacing.
And that's part of the study we approved too. The study to do all of the rates and everything. Find out if you hire a 7th, is that person with all their salary and fringes and retirement? Is that what we need to do? Or can we contract outside services to do some more of it so that we can concentrate our current labor staff on what can't be done with a general outside firm? Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, those are the kind of things that we all have to think about if we want this county to go forward for the next, forever, because I've been here 30 years. I think that the county is more important every year to the citizens of Cape Cod. And I want to make sure that we're financially able to be that benefit to the taxpayers and citizens. Thank you. Is there a question on this from the board, from the committee, I should say? We're not a board. I see Delegate Killian, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We received information in our packet, and I think you included 2 labor agreements that we currently have for facilities in the registry. Is that correct? Those are the only 2?
Correct.
Okay. And you gave us a rough estimation of the number of employees in each. Do you have the exact number? I know it's relatively low.
I don't have the exact number, but it is relatively low. I mean, I would say Registry of Deeds is, Carol can correct me if I'm way off, is probably in the neighborhood of 20. Used to be about 50, and they've shrunk over the years. And my guess is that as technology increases, they'll continue to shrink their employee pool.
Okay, and it appears that the facilities agreement is in force until the end of fiscal 27, it appears.
Correct.
And okay, so if we were able to make any adjustments to be it health insurance or any salary schedule, we'd be looking at FY28, which would be essentially what we're going to be looking at anyway. So we'd just leave the registry, which would have to be extended another year until we can make any adjustments to it, correct?
Right. They expire in FY28.
Okay.
Correct.
FY28. Okay.
The 2028, the year 2028.
Right.
And they all expire on June 30. They coincide with our fiscal year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
looking, yes, June 30th, 2028.
So I know
Okay,
these
yeah.
are the big questions. I'm sorry? Go ahead, Jim.
Just if we can get the actual numbers for the facilities department that are subject to this agreement, that would be helpful. Thank you.
So we've touched on fiscal forecast for the next decade. I know there's a much bigger questions that we have to answer, and as both sides of the fence too. I think we all are in this. We all want to get to the same place. We want financial stability, and we've been duly warned by our treasurer and finance director that we're heading in the wrong direction, or we're financially heading in the wrong direction. We have to correct it. So. I guess this is going to be an ongoing. I don't see any other questions from my board, but this is going to be an ongoing discussion that we all have to come up with creative ideas. And also, I've written down something we've always done too is mission creep, and focusing on what the county does well, focusing on what our core needs are to do so. Delegate Frizel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, a couple of things. First, I found the numbers I was not sure I was recalling correctly. So we got a nice analysis from the finance director on health insurance. And I know you got caveats on how it was put together, but just accepting the methodology for the moment on that. It shows that if we shift from 25, 75 in 5 percentage point increments, what that could mean in annual savings. And it starts at a 30% sharing, saving potentially 230,000. And if you go all the way to 50, then it's over $1 million. It's $1.1 million, right? So that's an element, health insurance, in the sharing of health insurance, and the plan profile are things that seem to be something to look at. In that, I think what we want to do is we want to get some consensus between the administration and the finance committee on how we're going to start to put the budget together in September. Because if we don't reach some consensus by then, the train's left the station. And it minimizes and severely reduces the ability to change course for FY28. So I think we have to somehow come up with an agenda on how we're going to discuss potential instructions that could be coming out in September if we're going to start going in a direction that's, reversing what the finance director has projected. So I'm not sure we've agreed on how we're going to do that.
Are you directing that question or that comment at anybody in particular?
I'm addressing that comment to all of us for discussion here. It's not so much a question as are we going to just say, okay, we've seen these numbers and they look bad. Okay, we'll see you in September or we'll see you in January. Or are we going to say, let's try to see if we can improve these numbers with some consensus between administration and the finance committee before we get to September?
Okay. I see at least 3 people here. I've got Delegate O'Malley, I think, first. I get you twice,
So-
Doc.
Regarding the question of the split.
You're on 2 different.
God, I'm working on 2 machines. Shut up. Regarding the split on the health insurance, I'm interested in what is the standard in municipalities across the Cape. Now, of course, with the study that I've been doing with the group I've been working with, has looked at what towns are spending, and we never asked that question directly. What is your contract? It's clear to us from how much some towns save by the proposed single payer thing versus what other towns save, that it depends on what their proportion is. I wonder if that information is available. As we're facing this is a big question. It's a very weighty one. It's going to be trouble. And I think if there's any way to collect information from the towns about what their existing split is, how they're handling it. I know some of them are 50-50. I know there's a number of them that are at 25-75, but I don't have that in any solid fashion. And I'm just wondering if, Michael, through the town managers group, is that information we could collect kind of quietly?
I could certainly, if that's not available through the health group, then I could certainly find that out through the town managers. Sure.
I think that would be useful. We obviously, this is where the bigger money lies that's readily available. And I'm reluctant to push forward on this without some sense about what the existing norms are. I don't want to lose people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's actually a good point, and one of the things that sort of gets lost in what appears to be sort of the low-hanging fruit of premium splits or so forth, or COLAs for that matter, is looking at things as total compensation package. So, if you look at what we offer a 75-25 split currently. And we pay within a range that's been sort of vetted by a classification and compensation study 3-4 years ago. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is addressing total compensation packages so that simply cutting a percentage or 5, 10, 15, 25% from health insurance is an impact to the employee. It affects their total compensation. If the town of Barnstable has a better total compensation package, we'll lose employees to the town of Barnstable or the town of Provincetown or the town of Falmouth, whatever the town may be. So we want to put it, in context, and make sure that we're looking at that total compensation package, and making, I would say making sure that the services we're offering are the services that are needed by the town. So maybe the more difficult and possibly the more productive policy question is, are there services that we're offering that simply we shouldn't be?
Mm-hmm.
That the better place to look for savings when it comes to our budgets. But
Mm-hmm.
that's that requires a fair amount of vetting, and a fair amount of communication with the towns. I could I'm sure look at the different services we offer and think, okay, well, that's not a necessary service, but on the flip side, we get a significant pushback from the town saying, no, that's critical service, and vice versa. So that's, I think that's that's kind of what defines the challenge to some extent in front of the finance committee is, how do we preserve the quality of our employee? Because that's, if nothing else, the county survives on doing good work for the town. So we want to make sure we hold on to the employees that do that good work. I've often said, I have no problem working with fewer people, as long as they're good and we pay them well. No problem with that. So it sort of begs, the exercise sort of begs the question, are we offering services that the towns don't necessarily need or want? And on the flip side, are we not offering services that could potentially be revenue generating services that the towns really do need? And so I've now sort of expanded the discussion beyond the simple into the more difficult, but ultimately that's really, I think, if we're going to look at creating something that's structurally sound, I think that we have to ask those questions as well.
Thank you. I see Delegate Killian next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up with Delegate Frizel, his comments, and those, he basically echoed what I was saying last meeting, that we really need to come up with a plan and follow it. So we know how we're going to get there and what discussions need to take place. I had planned on reaching out to my town manager about the actual costs that sandwich charges or the shared cost is. But given my own experience, where my company, we used to pay 100% of the medical insurance. That was many years ago, and because of the increase, we have had to shave that down over the years and create more of an equitable split. And I deal with many municipalities, and I know that their split is 50-50. So it does kind of run all over the map. And I understand and appreciate Administrator Dutton's comments about retaining, the talent that we need to. And I can just say that I have lost talent to the public sector because, it's a fairly generous compensation package when you factor in the pension and the insurance, and the work schedule, the holidays and vacations. It's fairly attractive. But obviously, we're going to have to balance that and make sure we can accomplish what we want to. But I think we all recognize the clear need to come up with some sort of plan. And it sounds like Administrator Dutton is actually amenable to reducing staff if in fact that will suit our needs or suit the county's needs and the town's needs, to accomplish the same thing by small cuts throughout the whole staff. But we clearly need to lay out all these ideas and look at them. And one of the other parts we could look at, if we considered to change the contribution rates for the employees and perhaps offer less expensive plans, which is what we did. We had a range of plans, and where the employee had to contribute a little more, we offered them plans that were less expensive. So the economic effect on them wasn't as great. But again, it gives the employee that option of choosing the programs that best suit them.
Thank you. I noticed that Finance Director Coppola sent us that what our plans look like and how many people are in each one of those plans. So that's something that, thank you for that. I haven't had the time, maybe the expertise to digest it all. But it says that we have 173 employees active on healthcare. Is that still accurate? It says FY 2027. So isn't that what you sent this to us? I'm sure. The group insurance premium cost analysis.
Yes, that's a correct number.
Yeah, and does that vary a lot? I know that the people will change their health plan situation, depending on marriage, divorce, children. I don't know. There's a whole plethora of ways they can do it. Are we pretty set with because we have something in the order of 270 employees, do we not?
So this FY 27 is the first year that the county's going to be offering a stipend for employees to opt out of health insurance.
That's where I was going with this. Yeah.
And so that we did see an uptick in those numbers for FY 27. So open enrollment closed at the end of May. And so we do have those final numbers right now, except for any vacant positions, current positions.
And does every person that opted out of healthcare and into a benefit plan, has that been significant since you've closed out that for FY 27? How many people have opted out?
We did see an uptick in those numbers of folks that choose to come off of the county plan and provide proof of insurance and jump on to maybe their spouses or another plan.
Is that saving us significant money?
It is.
Okay. And rough number?
Well, it depends on whether they took a family plan or an individual plan. So I can pull up the information for you. If you give me just 1 second. So a family plan for, let's just say, Harvard Pilgrim, HMO, is the monthly premium of that plan is just over $3,000 for fiscal year 27. And so if you had, three people opt out of that plan, for a family, the county provides, I believe, $5,000 as a stipend for, and however, the total premium of that plan is like $36,000. So there's
Oh,
a
wow.
significant savings. Now that's the
Really?
total premium. The county share of that premium is like just over $2,300 a month, which is still significant.
That's good planning. That I didn't realize how fortuitous that is to get somebody to opt out like that. I'm glad that's true. And is there one plan that is so significantly more expensive than the others that we might look at that particular plan as becoming not an option?
Well, your PPO plans are more expensive. And that's whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO or Harvard Pilgrim. Blue Cross Blue Shield is your more expensive program. And that's the most expensive program that the county offers, is that Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO.
Okay. So
We,
there's
I'm sorry.
no,
sorry.
go ahead.
The county, for the first time in a fiscal year 27, is offering high deductible plans to employees.
I saw that.
Yes. And so those high deductible plans come with, obviously a higher deductible, but they are a cost savings to Barnstable County as well, and the
Well,
employee.
Yeah, that sounds like you're actively trying to control
Yes.
healthcare, including the break when went from 15 to 8 by getting rid of the fat reducing plan. I think it was, to be blunt.
And there's 15 folks or 15 employees signed up for that plan to begin July 1.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Frizel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just curious, in the FY28 projected deficit of $1.2 million, roughly, which is in your budget book for this year, I noticed debt service and interest jumps by roughly $900,000 from FY27. So from 27 to 28, debt service, including interest, goes up from 1,600,000 and change to 2,500,000 and change. So call it $900,000. So that if I just want to know whether that $900,000 that we're seeing in that debt service could be something on the revenue side we can cover from some of these stabilization funds that we've created. And if that is true, then the deficit for FY28, just to throw numbers out for the sake of it, could be reduced from $1,200,000 to $300,000. So that's why I find these reserve funds something that need to be focused on, because we put money aside in prior years for a purpose. And the bills are coming due on what we put the money aside for. So if the money's been put aside for that purpose, we need to, seems to me, it's why you use those funds. And if you're using those funds, then regular other revenue sources, like the excise tax, the biggest one, right, doesn't need to be used for that. And so that's why I would like us to integrate in our planning what these funds are available for and how they can help us to at least reduce, just picking that if I'm right, I could be wrong, right? But that reduces FY28 to 300,000. Well, then if we make some adjustment in healthcare plan design, what have you, and sharing, that might find a way to get through FY28. And then you move that forward to FY29 and see what more you have to do. I just getting at the point that when we sit down, we start talking about a plan, as Delegate Killian mentions, and I'm in full agreement with that, a plan, and before September, we need to start knocking off certain options because they're not going to be available to us. For example, just an easy one we talked about earlier, the unreserved fund balance, not an option. We have to design a budget that does not touch it, right? Number two, what is an option? Well, maybe an option in designing this budget going forward is to tap into those funds that we've put money aside for to pay for certain things that are actually making a material difference in the number in that operating budget as we move forward. So that's the kind of analysis and thinking that I think we need to start putting together to, quote, have a plan as we move into FY27 and the years after.
If that's it, it makes perfect sense to me that we have to look at all those options. I'm always grateful for your analysis, and that's a big number, 900 grand that we could be not chopping down if we use some reserves that are really not making us money. So statutory reserves is what you're attacking right now. Good. Thank you. Any other comments about that or other things regarding number 7 here? Well, I guess the next question is where do we go from here? What's the next step for the assembly and the administration? Do we delve into the question you just asked and find out if that sounds like there's a potential big savings. That's a big jump from 1.6 to 2.5 in statutory reserves. Statutory debt service.
If you would like some ideas on that, I'll just throw out a couple of quick ideas. Our next meeting could focus on that right there, all right, which we just talked about. It could also focus on what's realistic with respect to healthcare insurance plan and sharing designs. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, if that's like a non-starter, let's move on. Let's move on to something else, all right? Part of what we have to do in planning here is not waste time on things that just aren't realistic, right? That are non-starters. If that's going to make us too, lacking in competitiveness for employee recruitment and retention, then we may have to say that's something we can't touch, just like we can't touch the unreserved fund balance. It's another one of those untouchables. Let's move on to what we can touch. But we have to start, I think, narrowing down to those things that might work to get us through this period of, at least I see in the budget book, 28 through 31 deficits that increase from 1.2 to 7 million. So that's, I think if we take on 1, 2, 3, 4 fiscal years, that's quite an assignment. Taking on 10 is a much bigger question. Too many uncertain unknowns.
Further comments from anyone in the room? It's a big task. I'll look forward to hearing about the healthcare. And we'll make, like you said, maybe that's not an issue that we can delve into right now when it all comes down to it. But I think that core mission, that's a big number that we have to decide, and the administration is very capable of at least looking at that. What do we do, and what can we not have to do? That's huge, and that would include you'd lose staff over that if you decided you didn't need this program or that program. There's staff that were directly involved in that. So,
Yep, there is.
let's see. We've got Delegate Killian.
Yes, just if we could, if we do decide to make any changes that are going to involve amendment or changes to employee agreements, the facilities agreement, which expires in 27, at what point would the administration typically begin to negotiate and finalize the next agreement? Would that be 6 months prior to its expiration or sooner? How long would that be?
Good question. Generally, it's within the contract is 6 months. Is generally the rule of thumb, and it's usually outlined right within the contract. One of the parties will notify the other of collective bargaining or willingness to collective bargain for the next agreement. So 6 months, rule of thumb.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Ideas?
I just think we should set a time for next meeting.
Sure, we'll do that. You want to just do it on our own? We want to make sure that the administration is able to show up. So, I'm available. So, you want to set up for like 2 Mondays from now or next Monday? Next Monday could be tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 2 Mondays from now, the holidays will be over. Oh, Clerk Fletcher.
Can we maybe move that part of this offline and figure out when staff is available, when we have a quorum, all
Yeah,
those
okay,
things.
yes.
And I know
We
it'd
don't
be
have
good to
to do it
set
right
one
now, you're
now,
right.
but
Let's
yeah.
come
I
up
don't
with a
need the
plan
pieces.
and we'll look at everybody's schedules and come up with a 4 o'clock day, a 4 o'clock time somewhere, and try to keep it to an hour. I know it's
Right.
going to a little over an hour now, but I think that was very worthwhile, and I really appreciate everybody's time with this. You know, I think we're all in the same boat, and we're rowing upstream, so we might as well figure out how to keep it going, how to keep this county going in good fiscal condition. All right. If there are no other comments, I will adjourn this meeting. And thank you once
you.
again,
Thanks,
very
everyone.
sincerely for all your time. Take care.
Bye.